Alright, hey, I'm Ty Ward. I'm here to introduce you guys to Fantasy31. How many people in here have ever played a fantasy sports game? Alright, a few of you, that's good. Alright, so if you guys that haven't, it's a way to take real life sporting events, turn it into points, and you can compete against your friends for bragging rights and or money. It's been around for 50 years in many forms. And look, annually about $7 billion in this country are spent on fantasy sports each year. Fantasy31, we're going to make a head-to-head mobile game you can play against your friends and play fantasy. We want to feel like we are the gateway drug to harder fantasy that people are going to get into for the mobile users. All right. The team, me, Tony, David, Samson, we all came together, 3 Fairfield guys and 1 Des Moines guy. Right. The problem, fantasy has become big money since the federal legalization. It's legal in 42 states to play for money. The problem is now that the expert sharks are able to go in and they dominate all of the average players. The normal player spends about 4 hours per week messing with their fantasy rosters and about 9 hours per week doing research. That's a lot of time, but they still can't compete with the experts who probably spend 30 hours doing this, and they can't compete against them. So the average player is getting they're getting their butts kicked in these competitions. They need something where they can play that's fun again. The average fantasy player is also 38 years old and male, while the average mobile gamer is the casual gamers are 26 years old and female, and the core mobile gamers are 30 years old and male. So fantasy players can definitely come down in age if we attract that market. Our solution, mobile app, quick and easy to play against people you know. Stay true to what fantasy sports is, don't change the rules on them so that people that love fantasy sports can still play this and feel like it's a game that they love. And you can play for bragging rights and or money where it's legal. Alright, here's screenshots from our full working demo that we have. I want to remind everyone we are not graphic designers. We are almost all developers. So these do not look pretty. We would definitely want to hire a graphic designer. So the game is based on the 31 card game. You're going to get 3 players, so you only pick 3 players, a quarterback, a running back, and a wide receiver. Your goal is to get up to the 31 points that week and not go over. Closest to 31 wins. It's like blackjack, but you're projecting what the cards are going to be later when they actually reveal the values to you afterwards. You would start a game, you can play against randoms or your friends, you pick them, and yeah, that's what you dominate. Market validation. We went up and we surveyed a bunch of people, but most of them were my friends, and to nobody's surprise, they're all sports fans, except Kevin. Many of the fantasy football players do not play mobile games, and many of the mobile game players did not play fantasy. So I think there's a lot of room for crossover there, especially among women who seemed like time constraints were a big deal for them. So we're making our game that it only takes 1 or 2 minutes. Market size, like I said before, there's a lot of players, 60 million players in the US and Canada alone, 7 billion in revenue. Average player spends $500 a year on their fantasy teams. Performance and review, 10%, so when we're doing these projections, we projected 10% of the download can turn into active users. And we talked to a guy in Iowa City who does mobile games, and he said that with a combination of microtransactions and ads, we could expect $5 per user, per active user. So that's where we got our gross income. And for our 3 months out, we wanted to get 1% of the fantasy world to try our products. We felt like that was conservative. Startup costs, got to do a lot of marketing, got to get a lot of hardware, got to do a lot of data and licensing. Our business model is we're creating a free game. We want people to play it, and we want them to be a part of the infrastructure. Competition, there's a lot of companies that are doing it. FanDuel, DraftKings, Draft Day, they're the fantasy companies. The other 2 games are social companies, or social media, the regular games you might be playing. Our competitive advantage is that we're going to be head-to-head, and that's inherently more social than playing against 10,000 randoms. And yeah, there's a lot of apps in the store, and there's not a lot of apps doing this. So really, that's good or bad. David and Samson to the stage. I felt like I was speed talking. I apologize. There's a lot of data to go through. Hi, judges. How you guys doing?
Hey, good. I think I like the concept. I think there is room to slice off parts of the fantasy world, sports world. I think 1% is everyone's dream, and every businessman you've ever seen get 1% of something. No one ever gets 1%, so they become the monster. But you may not eat 1%. I think in general, I think that's a nice niche that could be carved out. It could be a little bit more.
Awesome, thank you.
Nice job, Ty and team. Ty, you mentioned that a lot of mobile users don't play fantasy games, and fantasy game players aren't necessarily, too much on mobile. I'm hoping you can explain that a bit more, and how you guys reconcile that paradox, or whatever you want to call it.
That was mostly through our surveys. We sent out surveys, or we walked around surveying people to ask them those questions. And yeah, the fantasy players tended to be a little bit older, and so they weren't playing mobile games very often. And maybe they were playing 2 hours per week, 1 hour per week. The people we knew that were playing 2 hours per day weren't going into fantasy as much. So we saw that there was a lot of separation between the two markets right there. So if you could bridge that gap, and you could bring the casual gamers into fantasy, and fantasy into casual gaming, there's a lot of crossover room there. That's what the data seemed to tell us. And the data was very small sample size. It's us asking our friends, so caveat.
Absolutely. And then you mentioned really in the last slide about competitive advantage being the head-to-head challenge component of yours. Is that unique? Do some of these other competitors that you mentioned out there have that as a feature? I mean, how is that truly a competitive advantage?
So a lot of the daily sites that are out there right now are kind of like the poker sites that are out there, where you're playing against random people. And they may have contests where you're playing one-on-one, but they're not trying to get you to play against friends that are in your friend book. We would like you to actually spread this game to your friends, and I want to play me versus Ben so I can get the bragging rights for the week. So they do have heads-up playing, but they don't have it's not very social when you don't know the person. It's easier to smack talk a guy you went to college with than it is some guy who probably lives in Canada somewhere, So we're actually trying to make it so it's not anonymous. You're not playing against anonymous people, but playing against your friends and make it a little bit more fun, a little bit more social, more smack talk, more engagement, more people staying within the ecosystem.
Okay, great. And I really like the network effect that could create. And just for the record, there would be no bragging rights in the Ty versus Ben. This Ty would get
This time. You know it.
That's time. Thank you guys.